Well, hello everybody and welcome along to this revision video for Remains. As it says on your screen there, you're going to need to be ready to pause this video whenever you see that symbol and I refer to it. And then this is all about adding notes to your copy of the poem in order to make you better prepared for when it comes up in your exam one day. So here we go. First up, before we go much further, you're going to want to pause in a minute. Make sure you've actually got your copy of the poem in front of you, please. If you don't have a copy with you, then you could either copy one down off the internet or print it. If you just simply search for Remains Simon Armitage, it will bring one up. There's a good one available on BBC Bitesize, in fact. So pause the video just to make sure you're ready to have your copy ready to go. And then when you are, let's get going. Start by thinking about the poet himself. So Simon Armitage, British poet and novelist, as it says there, and it gives you information about where he lives. Appointed Poet Laureate, it says, in 2019. The job of the Poet Laureate is to write poetry at national occasions and for the nation. So it's sort of an honorary role, really, that he's been given there. His poetry deals with a variety of topics and themes, and I've taken the bottom bit there from BBC Bitesize, actually, as well. Unpick a couple bits with you. It says about his poetry being known for its colloquial style. So that word colloquial meaning like informal, written in a much more relaxed manner, as you would probably talk to friends rather than written in a very formal and serious way. There's strong rhythms and definitely a clear voice. I won't read all of that to you. Use that to add to your own notes. Often uses a monologue form, so monologue being like a speech delivered in one direction, so one person talking and speaking their thoughts to the audience. And deadpan refers to the fact that he often is funny, but not funny in a over-the-top trying to be funny. Deadpan refers to a very sort of flat sort of comedy, and as it says there, sometimes it's darkly humorous. So it deals with things are made funny which you wouldn't normally expect to be made funny. So there's Simon Armitage. Again, make sure you just add some notes there as well. Knowing a little bit about the poet can help you understand why they write their poetry in the way that they do. And then some context for Remains for you. So important to realise that actually this was from a documentary that Simon Armitage actually created for Channel 4. So as well as writing poetry, he does all sorts of other work, including some TV work. And the documentary was called The Not Dead. As it says there, exploring experiences of soldiers from recent conflicts. Particularly looking at the traumatizing experiences. If you put The Not Dead and documentary as keywords into YouTube, you'll find the whole thing. And the bits that this poem actually refers to are about 45 to 50 minutes in. You'll actually find a reading of the poem Remains in that documentary. PTSD comes up a lot, and just making sure you're familiar with it and have that written down somewhere for your own notes. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Post meaning afterwards. Traumatic from the word trauma, so like a really severe experience. Stress is a word hopefully you can understand there yourself. And a disorder is where something isn't right. So if it's in order, it's in a good way. If it's disordered, it's not in a good way. And the actual definition there is there for you. It isn't just to do with war. People who have car accidents, who witness robberies, who are part of sort of extreme situations, anyone can suffer from PTSD. We do associate it often with the army and soldiers. And years ago, it was actually called shell shock from the First World War. But there you go. So that's a little bit of context for you. So I haven't got the pause symbol up there. But again, make sure you've got some notes written around your page there, because they will all come in useful for you as you move towards the exam. And then actually, before we move any further, you just need to pause and reread the poem to yourself. So if you've got it in front of you, brilliant. If you prefer to work this way, there's a link there. Or if you search for BBC Bitesize and Remains, it will take you to this page. And actually, you'll find there's a reading of the poem by Simon Armitage himself, so you can hear the poet's voice. So either way, get ready to pause this video now and just go through that poem yourself. And then we move on to actually analyse it. So this is where you want to have your pen ready and do little bits of pausing when you need to. Always consider the title of poems. The titles are really important. They're often written last by the poet. The titles will often convey a message. So with this one, consider the connotations of Remains. The connotations are What does it make you think of? What do you associate with the word remains? And my second bullet point there just gives you some ideas that I came up with. Like the leftovers, they are things that are unwanted, forgotten about. They're actually quite negative connotations. So it's worth adding those to your notes and thinking about the fact that there are largely negative connotations of remains. It's what's left over at the end of something, and in many ways you could link it to the fact that the soldiers, it's the remains of the soldiers. Who they are now was not who they were before they went and had these terrible experiences. So it almost implies that these soldiers have gone through terrible things and they are not the people that they once were. So yeah, make sure you've got some notes for your title. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the poem now. I'm not going to be able to pause and talk about every single thing. Online are a whole wealth of resources. There's other YouTube videos you could find, and you will always find that your English teacher will be able to tell you so many things, and then there's always other things that you could go even further with. So I'm going to point out a few of the absolutely key things for this revision video in the time that I have with you, but it's absolutely worth going through and annotating with your own ideas as well. And the other thing is there's some very good revision guides out there as well, which also offer notes. So here we go. On another occasion, we got sent out to tackle looters raiding a bank, and one of them legs it up the road, probably armed, possibly not. So that's your first stanza going on there. Notice how it leaps straight into the action, on another occasion, implying that there was a previous occasion that this person was talking about. The speaker was telling you a story, and now we've moved on to another story. So it feels like we're being addressed directly. You have got that feeling of direct address. Tackled looters raiding a bank. A looter is someone who's stealing, so they're raiding this bank, and one of them legs it up the road. We talked a minute ago about Simon Armitage using colloquial language. Well, that's a good example of it right there. Legs it up the road. Probably armed, possibly not. So those two adverbs there, the probably and the possibly, both imply this sort of sense of uncertainty, that they're not completely confident about this situation. Second stanza. Well, myself and somebody else are all of the same mind. So all three of us open fire, three of a kind, letting fly, and I swear, and in the enjambment spills over onto the next stanza there, but that's where the actual stanza stops and there's a line break. Again, look at the sort of informal, just the storytelling, the somebody else and somebody else. It's all very vague, would be a good word there, V-A-G-U-E. So they're all of the same mind, all three of us. There's lots of repetition going on there as well. It almost maybe could be linked to the fact that this soldier is stuck in a loop. He's stuck with these memories and going over them again and again, which is why that repetition almost mirrors that experience that he's got of going over something again and again. The next stanza. I see every round as it rips through his life. I see broad daylight on the other side. So we've hit this looter a dozen times, and he's there on the ground, sort of inside out. Again, really quite horrible imagery. You've got a bit of assonance going on there, it's called, where you've got internal rhyme within the sound of words on the last line, where you've got ground and out, those OU repetition as well. Almost draws your attention, it emphasises what he's trying to tell us here. The repetition there again of I see, and the violent verb you've got there as well, these bullets that rip through his life, not rip through his body, they rip through his life. It sort of maybe shows us the impact that this shooting has had on the soldier himself. Broad daylight on the other side. So yeah, there's that stanza dealt with. Moving on to the next one. Pain itself, the image of agony. One of my mates goes by and tosses his guts back into his body. Then he's carted off on the back of a lorry. You've got a bit of weak rhyme going on there at the end of body, lorry. So again, Simon Armitage is playing with words here, trying to draw our attention to certain images. There's certainly a real gory image going on there as well. The image of agony, this person who's lying on the floor suffering. One of his mates, one of these fellow soldiers goes by, tosses his guts back into his body. Think what sort of person you have to become to be able to do that and deal with that situation. It sounds so careless and like he's not affected by the situation. He tosses his guts back into his body, and then he's carted off. Carted off, well, a cart is something which carries it. To be carted off is another informal colloquial phrase. He's not taken away. The words chosen are carted off in the back of a lorry, almost like he's nothing, this body. He's just worthless, the fact he's carted off. End of story, he tells us. Except not really. His blood shadow stays on the street and out on patrol. I walk right over it week after week. Then I'm home on leave, but I blink. And then the stanza continues beneath on the next one. But the fact that there's almost a volta there, V-O-L-T-A. Look that word up. It's almost a shift in the poem where something moves dramatically onto something else. So we've moved away from the telling of the actual situation, and now we're after the event, and he's reliving the event. That PTSD we talked about, it's a reminder, this blood shadow, this image, this blood which remains on the ground there, and the fact he sees it again and again, so it's like it's stuck in his memory. He's been forced to relive events. So think about the fact we've had lots of repetition already in this poem, and now the soldier, we have this idea again of more repetition, week after week. Then we shift and he's home on leave, but I blink. And he bursts again through the doors of the bank. Sleep. So now we're talking about the soldier. He's asleep and he's reliving these memories of what he had to do with the shooting. Sleep, and he's probably armed, possibly not. Notice that line has been repeated again, almost like he's reliving the events, because we heard those words earlier. Dream, and he's torn apart by a dozen rounds, so like the bullets ripping through the body. And the drink and the drugs won't flush him out, telling us what this soldier is trying to do in order to get rid of these memories, to try and escape this PTSD. The drink and the drugs won't flush him out. Flush is almost this word which you link with removing something bad, to flush something out of your system. He's here in my head when I close my eyes, dug in behind enemy lines. So there's a bit of weak rhyme going on there as well with those two lines. Not left for dead in some distant sun-stunned, sand-smothered land, or 6 feet under in desert sand. You've got sibilance going on there with all those S sounds in the middle. And sibilance would often be a very soft sound and something we associate with being very delicate, but here it's been used in almost the opposite. It's almost the antithesis of that, you could say, where he's actually trying to use it to suggest aggression that he feels towards this situation. Words like sun, stunned. So the sun obviously is normally very positive, we would associate, but the fact that the land has been stunned by the sun and it's being smothered. To smother something is where you can't breathe properly, and the word 6 feet under is normally how deep you bury a body. So we've got lots of associations, lots of negative associations here with his memories of this place, with the final words being, but near to the knuckle, here and now, his bloody life in my bloody hands. The idea of blood on hands, often associated with guilt, implying maybe that this soldier is feeling the guilt for his actions, that he feels that he's got blood on his hands. You've got bloody being used there maybe in an aggressive way, and also literally blood on his hands as well. So you've got a bit of a double meaning going on there. And again, repetition. So think about how important repetition is. Think also about the structure of this poem. It's been laid out with enjambment, so it's like the memories are spilling over and he can't control them, yet we've also got very neat stanzas, neatness almost being like the military connotation, so it's laid out in neat ordered rows like his life would have been as a soldier, yet also it's spilling over. I mean, those are just some notes. Please do go to BBC Bitesize as well and use that website to actually add to your notes. The more notes you have, the more prepared you will feel for that exam. Those are some questions that you need to pause now as I'm running out of time and have a read of yourself, but those are ones which I'd like you to have a go at writing down somewhere so we can actually look at those together. They will make you consider bits of the poem, particularly number 5 as an absolutely key thing to think about here. Why has Simon Armitage written this poem? What is it trying to teach us? What are we learning by exploring this poem and reading about this soldier? So pause that one and have a go at those questions now, and use them to annotate your page. Before finally having a go at a practice question here for you. So how does Armitage present the psychological effect of war on soldiers? Remember, your exam one day and your question one day in the exam will actually ask you to compare 2 poems. Here I'm asking you just to unpick and think about one. And just to give you a bit of a clue, you can pause this next slide as well yourself. I had a go at it and colour-coded it with the PEAR being the 4 colours for you. Notice the sentence starters are in bold, so you could use those to help you. Particularly remember that it's important in the first bit that you choose a method the writer has used. You must use a quote. Make sure you unpick key words and explore the connotations of those words. What do they create? Why has the poet chosen those particular words? With the final bit being almost as important, if not more important, where you actually try and explain, like I did a minute ago, what the writer is trying to teach us, in this case about soldiers' lives. So really important you have a go at that practice question. And here ends the video, and I wish you the very best of luck as you move forward towards your exams.